Hello, welcome to the week 4 video for legal research. Now this is the point at which we start changing our approach in our program. The first 3 weeks we really dealt pretty much exclusively with the planning process, with breaking a topic down into its parts in order to understand it. We're now moving forward with the idea of, well, where do you go from here? How do you actually get started on your project? And that can be quite a difficult phase. So our focus this week is on time management and being able to use your time wisely. And hopefully through this we'll identify some of the pitfalls you can get into and some of the traps around time that can have significant effects further down the line. A lot of students say they don't like exams. I don't like exams either, but sometimes when you say you're bad at exams, what you're actually bad at is time planning. And what it means is that if you spend all your time or too much of your time focusing on assignments, if you don't budget your time wisely, it's all too easy to get stuck in a sort of a panicky focus on assignments in the middle of the term because they're all due and all the red lights are flashing and suddenly they seem more important. But if you're not devoting a suitable amount of time to the rest of your studies, to your reading, to keeping up with the study guides, your weekly videos and so on, what you'll find is by the time exams have rolled around, you've just run out of time completely. And it's very easy then to say, well, I'm bad at exams. I can't do exams because I'm terrible at exams. But what the reality actually is that you're probably worse at time planning than you are at exams. And if you ration your time more carefully, you will find that you are able to perform more confidently because you're more prepared. And sometimes, people will burn a 60% exam for a 20% assignment. They'll spend heaps and heaps more time on a 20% assignment than they probably should to try and pick up 1 or 2 or a half mark, or maybe not even any more marks with that extra time you spend, and then they'll bomb out on a 60% exam because they haven't used that time wisely. So in the study guide, there's a time budgeting exercise, and there's a video that goes with it. Please do this. Please make sure you do this for this week, because most students find it a real eye-opener, and it does help you understand where all the time goes, because week 2, week 3 of term, you're thinking, oh, there's another 10 weeks to go, it'll be plenty of time, and you blink and suddenly it's week 7 and all your assignments are due at the same time, and then you blink again and it's week 12 and you're running into exams and final assessment and everything else. So by trying to budget your time, at least you'll understand where the time goes and be able to plan around your your 8 to 10 hours per subject a week that you're allocating. And if you're not allocating that time, and if you're saying, oh, look, I can get by, lecturers always tell you 8 to 10 hours per subject, I can get by fine. The time budgeting exercise is a really good illustration of, if you are undercutting and saying I'm only spending 6 hours a week per subject, what the difference is and how little and what a big significant drop in resources you have if you're denying yourself that time to study. And I think I've said this before, if you're saying, well, that's fine, I only care about passing anyway, I'm not aiming for any higher grades, then honestly, time to walk away, because no one gets law jobs with just passing grades. I hate to tell you, there's a very, very competitive area. So if you just want your degree and you don't necessarily want to work in the field of law, you just want to have a law degree for the sake of it, or you think it'll be useful in another field, then fine, set your sights as low as you like. But don't be like the students who graduate and come back to us and say, I got all passes and I'm really shocked that I'm not finding any jobs out there, because you only get one go at your degree. You don't get to come back later and go, look, I'd like a do-over because I was a bit immature when I started. I didn't put my 10 hours a week per subject in. And remember, if you're doing 4 subjects, that's 40 hours. That's a full week's workload. I didn't really commit to it. Can I have another go again? Can I do another law degree? No, you can't. You only get one go at it. So sorry if that all sounded a little preachy for this time in the term, but honestly, it's because we really care about where you go in terms of your outcomes. And it is very, very sad when students come back when they've been out looking for jobs for a couple of years and they say, but nobody told me that I had to do better than just a whole lot of passes. Nobody told me that I'd be competing with students with straight HDs for all these jobs. Here I am telling you, and it's time to get that focus. So getting back to the point, the time budgeting exercise is a good way to get a really good reality check on how much time you're spending, how realistic you are about the time you're spending, and if you are in a position now where you're thinking, well, I'm now a little bit more scared about the job situation than I was 10 minutes ago, here's a good basic place to start in terms of committing that time, in terms of keeping to that schedule, in terms of when someone rings up and says, oh, can you come over? I've had an emotional thing, and can you come over? Can you do this? Being able to say, no, I've got my study I have to do. I've got, I have to be able to be strict with my time, with my friends, with my family, because I only get one go at this. And sometimes you have to be very selfish about that. And sometimes it means not getting distracted by everything that comes along. Everyone, it's nice to be supportive to your friends and family, and to be to socialize and to do all those things that normal people do, but it goes both ways. And if you're going to be supportive of your friends and family, they also have to be supportive of you and your studies, and they also have to respect you when you say, no, I can't do it, I have too much work to do on my studies, I just simply can't do it. And they need to respect that in you. Anyway, let's get on to the other things we're going to talk about this week. There's a reading that's aimed at pretty much at dissertation students and above. It's a fairly high level piece, but I think the advice in there is pretty good around managing time, so don't be put off by the fact it talks about dissertations and things. I think the advice is reasonably solid. There's quite a few videos this week, particularly in the equilibrium section, that I think are quite useful, and they deal with motivation, because the flip side of this planning process and the reality checking that you'll go through is it might impact on your motivation. You might end up with a situation you just end up paralyzed. You go, okay, I haven't really been putting my 10 hours a week per subject in, but now I'm looking at my planner, my time for the week, and suddenly I find that really demotivating. Suddenly I've got to find all this time out of somewhere to fill in that. What am I going to do? How am I going to motivate myself? Well, there's some good videos this week on motivation generally, and also some techniques on how to get started working when you aren't feeling motivated. So again, really recommend those there. Now, the other thing that we talk about a little in this unit is teamwork and planning time as it relates to working in teams. And obviously there's no actual team assessment in this subject, and you don't need to work in teams. However, I do strongly recommend that you work in study groups in order to not only make the work in this subject easier, but also to build those skills, to actually be able to develop teamwork skills. So teamwork is very important, and I know when you say teamwork, most students kind of shrink back in horror because they've had bad experiences with teamwork. You are going to be working in teams in your professional career. There's very little work you actually do by yourself, just for yourself, unless you're some kind of independently wealthy writer or something like that. Even if you're working as a self-directed person, you're usually working with others who are setting your goals and evaluating what you do. So you do need to get better at teamwork, and there's a reference in the study guide to some of the technologies that can be useful, some of the technologies that will help you organize your life and your time. I'm particularly fond of a web app called Doodle, for who knows what reason. That's just a scheduling app that you can put in some times, you can send it out to people, and they can say, I'm free this time, I'm free this time. And it's a great time saver when you're trying to organize a group of people to do things. One thing to think about going forward in terms of teamwork is sometimes in practice, in the real world, teamwork is sequential, not concurrent. And what I mean by that is you'll do work on some form of project and then you'll be handing it over to someone else. And similarly, the work you do will be based on the work someone else has done before. And that's where organisation becomes very, very important. We're having good protocols. We're having good ways of sharing information, recording information, keeping notes becomes extremely important. Now, the law firm is a classic situation of this, where there are files, and you'll pick up a file that a previous person has worked on who may have even left the firm. There may be no way to contact them. And you open the file, and then it's, the peak and shriek, open it up and go, oh my God, where are all the documents? And then you've got to deal with it. Or if you're lucky, you open it up and someone's got a beautifully set out set of documents and a whole lot of notes that explains what's gone before. Now, it is a difficult discipline to keep good notes in that situation, but it's very important because you don't want to be the person who's being cursed by the next person down the track who opens up the file and says, oh my God, what did that person do with this? Where are all their notes? Where's all the important documents? So the working in a law firm is, I suppose, the classic serial collaboration model, but it happens in all places. People don't stay in jobs for all that long these days. People are usually about 2 years is about the length people stay in a job on average. Now, a lot of projects will be running longer than 2 years. So you will be collaborating not just with your peers who are there at the time, and that's got an important set of skills, but you're also being collaborating with people who are gone and with people who will be there when you are gone. And I think that's something very important to think about when you start looking at teamwork skills, that it's not just a simple matter of trying to get everyone together and trying to get the lazy person to pull their weight and trying to stop the bossy person from running ramshot over everyone else's ideas. It is multi-dimensional, the teamwork problem. And yes, coming back to the problems of teamwork and solving the how do you deal with someone who slacks off and how do you deal with someone who just dominates the discussion, those problems don't go away in work. They're not just a thing you have to face and deal with as students. They're something that you have to deal with as in the workplace as well. I mean, you don't have quite the same level of sometimes you have as a student, someone will just completely disappear and you can't find them. Often you can find them in the workplace, but actually getting them to do their work and to do it at the quality the rest of the team needs it is still a problem. And it's not a problem that's easily solved by just going to the person's manager and telling them to do their work. If only managing teams was that easy that you could just tell people to do something and they would do it. So any skills that you manage to pick up along the way, in terms of managing, I mean, the focus this week is on managing time, but managing time usually involves managing teams. Anything you can pick up is great. The number one thing that employers ask for in graduate skills is teamwork skills, and management skills and organisational skills follow soon after. And most job interviews are going to be targeted job interviews where they will say, can you tell me a time when you had a difficult issue managing a team? Now, if you've been doing teamwork throughout your studies, you're going to have an example of that. You're going to be able to say, well, I have to do a project for civil procedure, and the project involved this, and we had this real problem because we couldn't find one of our team members. The way we solved the problem was this. So in terms of going forward to just practical things like job interviews, any of those experiences that you can gather as a university student, as well as the ones you get from your other work or your volunteering or anything else, become really important. Because if you go into a job interview and they say, tell us a situation where you did X, and you say, I haven't done it, I haven't had an opportunity, then that's not good in terms of employment. So have a look at the moment you're halfway through your degree, it's probably a good time to be looking very seriously at the job ads for the sorts of jobs you want to get once you graduate, and have a look what's in the position description. And there'll be a list of things that they'll say they want, and think about, if you're asked a question about that in a job interview, what are you going to produce as proof? If they say, the job position says you have to be a good communicator, what are you going to say when they say, tell us a situation where you had a difficult communication challenge and how did you solve it? What are you going to say? What evidence are you going to produce? Now, it's probably time for a little bit of an ad for the Legal Professional Portfolio elective, which is the final year elective, and that's an elective where you put together a portfolio of all your experiences that you've had, both as a student and in your real life as well. And one of the things we do in that subject is actually run you through some trial job interviews. So you actually get the experience of job interviews, and you actually can then look at where your gaps are. So have a look at that particular unit and think about whether that would be a good elective for you to do in terms of employability. It does require you to have a portfolio of extracurricular activities going into it. So if you haven't been volunteering, you haven't been doing moots, you haven't been doing competitions, you haven't been involved in all these sorts of things, again, now's the time to start thinking about those if you want to do the portfolio subject in third year. And again, this is news that people don't often want to hear, particularly those who are saying, look, I just want to get my qualification and get out. But employers want extracurriculars. They want to see someone who's out there in the mooting competitions, even if they're not winning. They prefer if you are winning, but even if you're not winning, they want to see that. They want to see that when legal drafting competitions, national competitions come up, that you're getting in and getting involved in that. That you're volunteering in a community legal centre, or you're volunteering in a non-legal context that shows you have good skills. But getting back to the week 4 of legal research, time management is an important part of that. Now, in terms of the workshop for this week, what we'll be doing is working through the requirements for the first assessment task, which is the analysis and project plan. So the analysis is really what we've been doing for the last 3 weeks, where we've been analysing and taking apart your particular question. And the plan is what we're talking about this week, where you have a serious look at the time you have available and you put in some reasonably firm estimates on how you're going to be spending that time and what you're going to be doing with that time. So we'll be, again, using question 1, I'll be working through a rough outline of the sort of thing that you want to do, to show you how I would plan out that particular question and how I would integrate that analysis. A few people, as always, say, well, have you got templates that we can use? The answer is no, because templates tend to be lethal to about 25% of students. People feel good about templates and they think, oh, I feel really comforted and reassured because I can work to a template. But templates make mediocrity. And because people often fall into the temptation to just copy out of the template, it really does people a disservice. And I think the reason people look for templates are a couple. I mean, obviously, if you're feeling anxious, it's a nice sort of feeling of reassurance, even if, as I said, it's fake reassurance, because it can lead you down the wrong path so easily. But the other thing is, I think that people have been burnt in the past by teachers, perhaps in high school or whatever, who say, here's an essay and then or a project, and you give them the project and they say, but I wanted the title to be in purple letters in 16 point and you didn't do that, so I'm taking marks off you because you're not following the exact idea I have in my head for how this is going to look. And that's not the case here. With these planning documents, it's all about you being able to express what you're doing as an individual person. I mean, obviously, if you want a template, you need to have your name on it, and you need to have what your question number is, for starters. But that's about it, because it's really about you being able to explain what it is you plan to do, and you being able to ask questions of us, and being able to say, these are the critical points to follow up on. Should I do this? Should I do that? So it's really completely about that feedback process, and about you being able to identify what the gaps are and where the places you need to do more work are, and get some feedback from the markers on that. So you'll have, in terms of a template or example, you'll have the worked example that we do in the workshop this week, but please don't slavishly follow exactly what I do, because your topic is going to be a different topic and it's going to have different needs. You're a different person and you're going to approach it in a different way. So this is a really important exercise in terms of being sort of open and reflective on your process, and being able to get that individualized feedback as much as we can within the marking context, because the markers don't get a whole lot of time to give you feedback. But if you're really clear about what you're doing, then we can give you really clear feedback. If you give us something that's muddy and muddled and confused, it becomes very much more difficult for us to give you direct feedback on what you're doing, because it's like, well, I'm not really sure what you're doing, so it's hard to give you that sort of feedback. All right, well, I've probably talked for long enough this week. Last point, do that time budgeting exercise, please. It's very, very important. And I will see you in class.